Paulie Malignaggi of Paulie TV. All right, guys. Everybody's asking me what my thoughts are on Showtime. What do you think? I'm going to be happy? Everybody makes like, oh, you know, being the past history that you had, you know, you're probably happy. I'm not happy Showtime Boxing is gone, because Showtime Boxing was bigger than me, and it was bigger than any other fighter. Showtime Boxing was a part of my childhood. It was a part of my growth experience in the sport of boxing. It was part of the experience of a lot of fans in my generation, and even older and even younger, within this sport. It's something that nobody who's going to be happy that Showtime is exiting. You know, I can't see that. Aside from maybe competitors, I can't see anybody really being happy. Now, you know, did I have a beef and an issue with the people that were working? Of course. I mean, that was pretty public stuff. But ultimately, there's nobody really that truly is a fan of the sport of boxing that is going to like the news that we got today about Showtime exiting for good. And, you know, basically going the HBO route and abandoning boxing for good. And that's sort of a shame. You know, the nostalgia of so many great memories, so many fun nights. And for me, of course, I both fought on Showtime as well as commentated for Showtime for a lot of years. So it's a shame, and it's sad that you know, it's gone. You know, it's not coming back. And as always, boxing has to move on, and boxing, you know, survives and will move on. You know, I just hope that, you know, the places where boxing winds up have as much possibility to get the same kind of eyes on boxing as boxing was able to get in its glory days of Showtime and HBO, and even when it was prior to that on network TV. That's the only thing, you know, that you worry about. You know, we say, oh, boxing is going to survive, but of course boxing survives, but does it wind up on the proper platforms? And that's sort of the issue, where I remain, my thoughts go into wonder as far as what direction that's going to go. You know, I've obviously moved on to Pro Box TV. I think it's a great home for boxing, but it's not championship shows. You know, we do a lot of live boxing. We do 2 Wednesdays a month on Pro Box TV. It's proboxtv.com if anybody wants to see it. And we've got podcasts, we've got shows, we've got all things boxing. We're gonna become your boxing channel. So it's something different than from what Showtime was. But where is the championship level boxing that was on Showtime? There's a lot of contracts there. Where do they wind up? What happens there? One of the things I'm hearing is Amazon Prime, but now I'm hearing Amazon Prime is not going to have the budget to hold up championship shows. So they're going to have like the former PBC Fox Sports 1 type of shows, from what I'm hearing. Again, I'm not in the inside here. I'm just going to give you guys the rumors that I've heard. But that would leave certain big contracts PBC has up in the air, because what network could afford those, and what network is going to be willing to grab those, because that's ultimately an investment. If you're going to grab those kind of contracts, that means you believe you're going to get the viewership necessary to bring you the ratings necessary to bring you the commercialization necessary to get the money back. Hopefully, for the fighters' sake, and obviously for the sake of boxing overall, because at the championship level, you always want to see as much boxing as possible where top guys can take on each other, and hopefully they actually do take on each other instead of beating around the bush with everything. But regardless, it's sad. You know, any true fan of boxing is not going to be happy, and that's myself included. When it comes to me, you know, a couple weeks ago, I said something on the channel. I said, you know, I treated Showtime like a stock. I got in when it was still on the rise. With the addition of me and the team that we had at that time, it certainly did rise. And then I treated it like a stock. I dumped it before the crash. And looking back now, with hindsight being 2020. You know, that looks like I was pretty smart, but honestly, that wasn't the intent, really. You know, I never meant to part ways with Showtime. Also, I saw some of you said, "Oh, Paulie didn't dump the stock; he got fired." Sorry, guys. Yes, technically, I got fired. I could have said I'm sorry, and I could have apologized, and made the people that are making those kind of comments, because that's why those people are making those kind of comments. I could have made those people happy by apologizing, because they would have been able to stick it to me. But instead, I chose to give you this. And instead I said, no, thank you. I'll take my walk. So did I get fired, or did I choose to get fired? Does that technically, you technically call that quitting? Because really, if I apologized, I would have still been in Showtime all the way to the end. But I got too much pride in my own self-worth to do that. The people that were working there, certainly, if you have a disagreement over something, I can respect it as long as you hold that standard throughout. And the reason I lost respect for those guys is because the standard didn't uphold when the shoe was on the other foot, and when we were talking about the same circumstance but with different kind of people on the other side wearing the other shoe on the other foot. And I had actually had approached Espinosa about that a couple of years ago, when probably some of you guys saw that dilemma I had at the Davis versus Pitbull Cruz fight in LA. So once I see that you're hypocritical and you're not holding the same standard for everybody, you're just holding it the same standard because, hey, man, I'm Caucasian and that's why you held the standard for me. But the standard doesn't uphold for everybody else. I lost respect for those people, and so unfortunately, that's something that that's hard to get back with me. I'm Sicilian. What am I gonna do? If you lose my respect, I'm a stand-up guy, but if you lose my respect, it's hard to get it back. Having said that, I'm very grateful to Showtime nonetheless, and from a personal perspective, it's sad, from a boxing fan, as many boxing fans are, that it's going out. But also from a personal perspective, Showtime gave me the biggest opportunity for commentating. Yes, many people over the course of my boxing career saw the way I spoke in press conferences, saw the way I spoke in interviews, and said, man, you speak very well. You'd make a great commentator. But honestly, it never really came my way. I did some guest spots before that, some with BBC Radio. I remember I had some fun times with BBC Radio. And I made a guest appearance in the studio on ESPN Friday Night Fights. I can remember years back before the Showtime stuff. But honestly, it really wasn't anything consistent. I didn't know how to even look for it. And honestly, at the time, I really didn't care because I was in the middle of my boxing career. But looking back at how things unfolded in my career, and obviously one day you have to stop boxing and one day you are going to move on. Showtime gave me the opportunity to get that kind of a job while I was still boxing, while I was still not worrying about life after boxing. And certainly it ended up coming into play where it helped me in life after boxing to remain not only relevant, but also making a nice check and be able to support, the lifestyle that I had created myself through boxing. Because let's face it, when you become a championship level boxer, you're upholding a certain lifestyle and you hate to give it up if you really can't avoid it. And so Showtime allowed me to comfortably keep that lifestyle, and also, more importantly, gave me the opportunity to show my talents and to show what I could do. Without the opportunity from those guys, regardless of how things wound up, and regardless of this agreement, and regardless of the fact that I probably will have a hard time ever respecting those guys again, I still wouldn't have been able to make a reputation for myself, such a good reputation for myself as a broadcaster, if I hadn't had those years at Showtime. Now, granted, one hand washes the other, don't get me wrong. Espinosa hiring me made them look good too. I know that and I understand that. And so from that perspective, they also were able to create a really bombastic broadcast team. I thought at the time we had the best broadcast team in the sport. Truthfully, I think now at ProBox TV I have the best broadcast team on fights with me, Chris Algieri, and Mike Goldberg. But at the time, I thought that we had the best broadcast team, and it was really a privilege to be able to have lived that part of my career, that part of my life with that network, and having that ability to be in everybody's living rooms and become the broadcaster that I became. And that opportunity, regardless of the fact that eventually we did part ways, eventually we did, like I said, as I said earlier, drop them like a bad stock in time before the fatal dip that they had now, which makes me look like a genius looking back. But just like a stock, you don't know when it's actually going to tank. You're just taking a guess, right? So looking back, I mean, without that reputation, I wouldn't have been able to jump into other jobs as well. And again, part of the reason why I didn't get along with those guys afterwards is because they tried to ruin my reputation and tried to prevent me from being picked up by the competition. They knew how good I was. They had me hired. So now they realize if they get rid of me and they don't ruin my reputation, the opposition like ESPN or DAZN might have picked me up right away. And those big networks, those championship networks, they all compete with each other. They definitely didn't want me to get picked up by the competition so that it would strengthen the broadcast team of a competing network. So what do? They cut my legs out from under me, tried to ruin my reputation. And that, of course, goes back into the basket of, as I said earlier, the basket that is that it's going to be hard to ever respect those guys again for that reason. But nonetheless, I still landed on my feet. But again, I wouldn't have been able to land on my feet if I hadn't been given the opportunity on Showtime to create that reputation for myself at that time. So that's it. I mean, everybody's asking me what my thoughts are on Showtime and Showtime leaving boxing. It's sad. It's nostalgic looking back through the years watching HBO and Showtime boxing, but certainly it's the end of an era, and I am just like all boxing fans. Ultimately, it's not something that makes me happy. I'm Paulie Malignaggi. This is Paulie TV.